The concept of sandfish or desert fish has been depicted in popular media. Sometimes it's a literal fish swimming in the sandy desert, but that's quite rare though. What's popularly depicted is actually some kind of reptile swimming in the desert. While it is not a shocking feat at this point, did you know that we as a human have known this kind of behavior? What I mean by that is, there is an actual real life counterpart of sandfish. Well, they are literally called sandfish actually. So, let me bring up the question. What exactly is sandfish? First of all, I would like to let you know that there is an actual group of fish called sandfish, and there is also a species of sea cucumber called sandfish. But those are obviously not what we're gonna talk about in this video. That's also why scientific name is important because a lot of the time, common names can be confusing. There is an entire commission regulating scientific names, and each organism group have their own commission. So yeah, it is serious. Anyway, sandfishes are reptiles. To be precise, they are lizards. If you have heard of the name skink before, sandfishes are actually the most skink of skink. One of them is the literal name bearer of skink. You are looking at John Skink right here. Usually, I'll talk about the etymology right here, but I couldn't really do that because, well, their name is literally just a name. It's like if your name is human. There is no etymology in the scientific name. At least if we're talking about the common sandfish though. There are several other species of sandfishes. At least 5 species of sandfishes are generally accepted to be valid. Aside from the common sandfish or Scincus scincus, there are Scincus albifasciatus, Scincus conirostris, Scincus hemprei, and Scincus mitranus. All of them can be found in the African desert. Scincus scincus can be found from the western desert through the Sahara into the Arabian Peninsula. Scincus albifasciatus can only be found in the western desert, while the rest can only be found in the Arabian Peninsula. IUCN Red List of Threatened Species stated the eastern sandfish can reach Iran and even Pakistan. But last time I checked, there is no reported observation of eastern sandfish from Pakistan or Iran in iNaturalist yet, so it truly is not common there at the very least. Next, let's talk about their morphology. In terms of size, sandfishes are not exceptional. Their total length can reach around 20 centimeters, so it fits nicely in your hand. As with many other skinks, the distance between their front and hind legs is relatively long. Their tail is relatively short compared to many other skinks though. They are covered in overlapping cycloid scales, which in many situations can look glossy. They have a long and flattened snout like a wedge. Their nostrils and eyes are relatively small. What's quite striking about their morphology is the feet. The legs themselves are relatively short, but their digits are long and flattened. The scales on their digits are also flanged. Oh, and they do have claws on each digit. I feel like it should be somewhat intuitive that they have claws, but I've read some articles stating they don't have claws, and that's not exactly true. They do have claws, like what you can see on the screen right now. Anyway, their color is generally brownish, but their coloration varies interspecifically and intraspecifically. What that means is, there is a coloration difference between species, but there is also a coloration difference between individuals of the same species. That's the case for most lizards actually, which is why it's usually not advisable to identify species based on their coloration alone. But for the sake of this video, we can talk about it at least in general. Scincus scincus generally have alternating gold and dark brown bands if you look at their back. Scincus mitranus generally have darker brown dorsal with lighter coloration on their sides. There are bands or blotches with darker coloration along their sides though. Scincus albifasciatus got its name because they generally have whitish band on their back that continues into dark bands toward their sides. But sometimes you can only barely see the dorsal bands, or perhaps not at all. Scincus conirostris generally have the faintest band among the sandfishes because their bands are generally yellowish and that blends with the surrounding scales. Now, for Scincus hemprei, it's actually quite easy to tell because they have dark coloration with white bands. And yeah, that's their general morph. But like I said, the morph of a species could vary between individuals. If you want to identify them for research purpose, you should look at their meristic traits. But don't worry about that if you just want to know about sandfishes in general. Next, let's talk about their lifestyle. But before that, I think it should be obvious by now, but yeah, they live in the desert. To survive the extreme heat and cold of the desert, they spend their time buried in sands, like many other desert animals actually. What's quite special about them is their ability to swim in the sand. Their shovel-like head helps in digging through sand. You might have guessed that their flangy shovel-like digits also help them in swimming through sand, but that's not exactly correct. The broadened scales on their digits help them move on the sand, so their feet don't get buried with each step. When they are swimming in the sand though, they fold their limbs and move by undulating, which is the typical swimming posture of actual swimmer lizards or crocodiles. By folding their limbs, they reduce drags. By the way, you might think this is not a big deal, but it actually kinda is, because non-swimmer lizards could swim if they have to, but they swim awkwardly by flaring their limbs and flailing around. The fact that sandfishes swim this way makes their name quite fitting. Some hypothesize they have specialized scales that greatly increase their ability to swim in the sand, but a comprehensive tribology analysis was done and published back in 2018, and it showed there is basically nothing special about their scales. Typical desert squamata scales basically. Hence, as far as we know, their gait and their undulatory movement is the main enabler of their ability to swim in sand. Not only that though, their respiratory adaptation enables them to stay submerged for a while. They can still breathe under the sand because there are pockets of air between the particles of course, but that would mean inhaling sand particles in the process. For sandfishes, they do have relatively small nostrils, which can filter the larger particles, but smaller particles will still go inside. They don't have a peculiar filtering structures like nose hair, cilia, nor anything like that. What they do have is a peculiarly shaped nasal cavity. When submerged in the sand, they exhibit slow inhalation pattern coupled with a strong exhalation. Sand particles will flow through following the yellow arrow in this image, while the air will follow through the green arrow into their lungs. After inhalation, they will exhale strongly to remove the particles inside their nasal cavity. It's like a cough or a sneeze basically. So yeah, sandfishes can stay submerged in the sand quite a while, not only to protect them from the extreme temperature, but also to hide from predators and to ambush prey. Not only are they mostly undetected by being submerged in the sand, they can also locate prey by detecting vibrations of the sand. I've seen articles stating they are viviparous, but their mode of reproduction actually varies, at least according to the data available in GARD, which is the biggest data source for reptile distribution and other datasets by the way. So let me just tell the specific. Scincus mitranus is indeed viviparous, but Scincus quincus and Scincus albifasciatus are oviparous. The other two have no data by the way. I also cannot find a comprehensive scientific publication that talks about their life cycle. But according to some articles, sandfishes reach adulthood at around 2 to 5 years, and they can live for 5 to 10 years. They exhibit internal fertilization, and scars and bite marks were observed in females around breeding season. So most likely males will bite the females during mating to hold them. And yeah, that's sandfish. Although they are not exactly rare and all of them are considered least concerned by the IUCN, there are many datasets that we don't have. So there are definitely more to discover. Who knows what we'll learn in the future. But for now, let's just learn what is known. And that's all for now. Oh, by the way, their ability to swim in the sand inspires biorobotic and biomimetic development. You can look up Georgia Tech Sandfish robot on YouTube if you are curious. Or I can just put the link in the description I guess. Anyway, enjoy your day.